What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. And I want to say thank you to JS. He kind of gave me the rough idea for this video. And it's one I've been kicking around for a while now. And that's related to the Book of Boba Fett and its effect on Boba Fett related collectibles. Mainly action figures, mainly vintage Kenner action figures. But I've got some other kind of foreign variants in here. And I've got some modern stuff. And I wanted to talk about what the prices have done here recently. And, you know, I'm not going to dive into spoilers for the Book of Boba Fett for those of you that have not seen any of the episodes, even the last episode, which was episode 4. It's been kind of a hit or miss show so far, in my opinion. I tend to lean towards the side of the show is fairly mediocre, to be honest with you. The last episode, episode 4, was very good. Episode 2 was very good. But even those episodes, and then 1 and 3, in my opinion, were both slogs, very kind of brutal to watch, especially episode 3. That was a pretty brutal episode. But, you know, even the good episodes, though, there's a lot of slogging going on, in my opinion. It just feels everything's kind of moving in slow motion. And there's a number of factors for that. But, you know, I wanted to kind of take a look at what the broader mainstream is saying about the Book of Boba Fett. And then let's take a look and see what collectibles have done. But the short answer for the thumbnail in my video is, yes, there's still a Boba Fett tax that is alive and well on Boba Fett related collectibles. And no, the prices have not slowed down at all. And if anything, they've gone way up. It's pretty incredible what some of these loose graded variants have done over the last few months. And you know, if you guys watch my market updates, you know that Boba Fett items have always been expensive. But here recently, they've kind of taken the next level, and we'll talk more about that. But what did The Mandalorian do so well that the Book of Boba Fett has failed to do, and has failed to kind of resonate with the mainstream audience? Because what really drives a show's popularity, and to a certain extent, Star Wars as a whole, as a franchise, its popularity, is crossing over from the hardcore fans. We all know that the hardcore fans are going to watch the Book of Boba Fett. I'm going to watch the Book of Boba Fett. I don't care if they have a dance number with the Vespa Super Squad and it turns into like a musical. I'm still going to watch it, all right, because I'm a Star Wars fan. But the missteps that I've seen in the Book of Boba Fett have allowed it to not capture the mainstream audience, you know. And the scores with the audience have certainly nosedived from the first episode, as this article points to. Bounding into comics, this is talking about comics, a comic website, good website, by the way, for kind of pop culture. And, you know, I'll put a link to all of the articles in the video description. And, you know, early on, after the very first episode, the ratings with Rotten Tomatoes, this is after the first episode, was about 85% with audiences, or 84%, and 85% with critics, and it's slowly gone downhill from there. And it's down about 20% with audiences, and you know you can see here's the Rotten meter. You know, there's only 6 critic ratings, but the user ratings is the one to look at, and that's where we start looking at what the mainstream is starting to say about it. After the first episode, there was only 61 user ratings, and after the third episode, it was more like 1,100 user ratings, and so it hasn't really resonated with the mainstream audience. And you know, it's a shame that they've taken the direction that they've had with it. And I think this is an oversimplification in this article, but it says the biggest problem with the Book of Boba Fett is there's no baby Yoda. And that's obviously an oversimplification, and none of us want to see yet another cute little cuddly animal. But I do think, though, that stuff like the baby Yoda, where it captures kids' imaginations and all that stuff, and it kind of created like a more iconic kind of mainstream pop culture phenomenon that was the baby Yoda, or Grogu. That allowed the Mandalorian to have success beyond just the hardcore fans. And I think the biggest problem with the Book of Boba Fett is that it's just structurally not a great show. There's a lot of flashbacks, and in my opinion, the flashbacks are actually better than the main show. And I think that's to me from a just a cinematic or storytelling perspective, that's the biggest problem with the show. Is, you know, the fact that like the train scene and what we saw in the 4th episode with Fennec Shan, those kind of scenes were much better, and they were all in the flashback. So that's been a big problem. And the other big thing that I think is worth pointing out is that Boba Fett was kind of a mysterious character, right? He didn't talk a lot in the original trilogy of films. You never saw his face. And the demystification of Boba Fett and seeing him outside of his helmet, seeing him become kind of a kind old man, you know, for lack of a better word, to a certain extent has, you know, the demystification of him has not been for the better for Boba Fett as a character. And I think that's another problem as well, is that, you know, it's driving, you know, maybe I'm coming at that as from a jaded perspective, but it does seem like that Boba Fett just isn't as cool as he used to be, for lack of a better word. So, but let's see how, you know, the mediocre reception for the Book of Boba Fett so far. Let's see how it's affected some of the sales prices. And some of these are a little bit older, but for the most part, I tried to include stuff that that sold after the debut of the show, and you know, as close to current market values as I could find. But here was one that, this is obviously the mail away Boba Fett, where it all kind of began. This one had the catalog as well as the kind of description from Kenner, the box, and then the baggie. And this one was graded 75 from AFA, and that one sold for $3,000, which, you know, in my opinion, that's probably about market. I mean, that's kind of where these mailer boxes have typically sold. This one was a AFA 80 Slave 1, still mint and sealed box. This one was best offer accepted at $5,000 plus $40 shipping. Really nice example though, and you know, kind of closer to, in my opinion, closer to a high watermark for the Slave 1, but that is a mint and sealed box, near mint example. And $5,000, you know, I always considered that to be maybe more 80 plus or 85 grade, but you know, an 80 is close enough, I guess, for whoever bought that. But definitely had some wear to it, but you can see there's some kind of litho tears on the box, but it's still got the 80 grade, which is probably a little generous, but a nice example. Now this one was a qualified 75, so slightly lower grade, and this was not a mint and sealed box. That qualified grade means that all the contents are there. It's unused contents, the inserts, the you know, all the good stuff is still there. And that one was listed for $3,900, and that one did sell. So to go from a qualified 75 grade, where it's no longer sealed, for $3,900 to go to an AFA 80 that's sealed, $5,000 best offer accepted. So some data points there. This one was a 21 back secret Star Wars action figure, which, you know, refers to Bosk. This was a yellowed blister. That one sold for $3,700, and you know, it looked legitimate. I mean, it didn't look like a fake or anything. It had a yellowed blister there, so that to me is a pretty low number, really, for what these Boba Fetts typically sell for. My gut says that was probably way below market, in my opinion. Here was another one that sold fairly recently, and you know, typically a yellowed 80 Boba Fett, I kind of put in my mind like $3,500. It's kind of the market rate. This one was listed for $4,600, and it sold fairly quickly. So clearly my math is way off, and I don't know if you can even keep up with market prices for mint on card Boba Fetts anymore. It just seems like every single month we get a new high watermark. But anyway, here's the label on this one. There's a yellowed 80. The card got an 80. The blister and figure got an 85. And again, that one sold for $4,600 fairly recently too. Here's another one. This one had a slightly less yellowed blister, but it was a 75 grade. The card got an 80. The blister got a 75. You can see the ding there in the upper right hand corner of the top of the blister. And the figure got an 85. Lionel price sticker there. I forgot about that store. I haven't been there in a long time. But anyway, this was a 65 back A. That one sold for $4,437. So yet another high score there. This one was ungraded, but this was a 45 back Palatoy. And, you know, a lot of these were Toy Tonys, so keep that in mind. But, you you know, this one had a price sticker that was removed, so clearly it was legitimate. But I think that the blister was pulling away on this one. It's hard to see, but you can see right there it's got some edge wear around the blister from where it's pulling away from the card. But even despite that, I think because people knew it was legitimate, since it had the price sticker residue on there, that one sold for $1,800. So, but even a Toy Tony that's been illegitimately graded by AFA or UKG, those have kind of, you know, bounced back off their lows. People don't care anymore, from what I can tell. I mean, obviously they pay more for a legitimate Palatoy Boba Fett where it's got like a price sticker or whatnot, but I have seen, you know, Toy Tonys that are high grade, and clearly, you know, is a Toy Tony that have still sold for just insane numbers. So, but this one looked pretty legitimate based on that sticker residue up there. But I think it was described as, yeah, tiny hairline crack, barely visible with naked eye, bottom right of the blister, very slight lifting of the bubble, top right. And I don't know if that's slight. I mean, it looks pretty heavy lifting right there for that whole blister. So anyway, just another data point for those that want like a pseudo mint on card, so to speak. I mean, it looks like it's getting ready to pull away at any time. This one was an interesting one. This was a Droid Series Boba Fett. Now, mint on card, this is $10,000 plus now. It's just insane what those have done over the last couple years. I mean, I remember someone selling one that was mint on card, very high grade. It was like a UKG 80 or 85, and they only wanted like $3 or $4 grand for it. And this is several years ago, maybe 3. Now we got a loose graded Boba Fett using the really nice cases that CAS does for displaying figures in front of the card back. But it's got the Droids card back, the coin, which is very expensive, and the Taiwan Boba Fett, which is what came inside these Droids mint on cards. That one sold for $4,000. It was admittedly a CAS 90 for loose grade for the coin and figure. But man, that is a crazy price. I love that display though. It looks really nice. I've got a number of these kind of displays for Lilly Letty's, but you know, the key is getting the version 5 Taiwan blaster with the Taiwan Fed, which is like a black blaster. So, but really cool item. But anyway, that's $4,000. That's a big number. That's a big number for a loose graded Fed. But as I'm getting ready to show you some of the other loose graded figures here, you know, when you start thinking about the fact that this one came with the coin, which can be $900 plus the card back, which is probably $100 or $200 by itself. You know, it's probably not too far off, to be honest with you, given that it's a 90 grade. But let's talk about some other kind of expensive variants, and a lot of these kind of variants we've talked about in various market update videos, but I've got a couple of really interesting ones. This one was a UKG 80 Taiwan painted helmet. And so you can see that this one seems to me, of all the different loose graded variations, and I'm excluding like the removable rocket Lilly Letty Boba Fett, that's a pretty difficult one to find and has always been, you know, multiple thousands of dollars. But I'm talking about normal mint on card kind of standard packaging Fets, like the painted helmet Taiwan Fett, or just a plain Taiwan Fett, but the painted helmet in general. The Hong Kong, you got the dark and light green chest, things like that. But to me, the painted Fett helmet is one that's probably experienced the most price appreciation over the last year. It's just been incredible to see the data points for that. But anyway, this one was a UKG 80 grade Taiwan painted helmet Fett. That one sold for $938, and that's kind of in line with where we've seen this one sell recently. We've seen a couple of AFA 80s and 80s and 80 pluses that have sold in that $800 to $900 range. That's been kind of the going rate for US listed ones. But this one was down in Australia, and again, it sold for $1,300 in Australian, or $938 US dollars. This one was an interesting one. This was another light blue painted helmet Taiwan Fed. This was CAS 80 grade. That one sold for $1,478. $1,478. That is an amazing number. And again, you need to be careful if you're going to spend this kind of money. Make sure that it has the correct version 5 Taiwan Black Blaster. I think it's a version 5. I'm going on memory. but you can see that one's clearly the version 5 there. But I have seen a number of examples from AFA or CAS that have the incorrect blast, and UKG. All three of them do it. All three grading companies. Make sure that it's got the correct blaster before you spend this kind of absurd money, if you got the deep pockets for this figure. But 1478 is just insane. That is a high number. And as insane as that number is, I mean, you know, there were some really nice ones. There was one I mentioned in a recent video that was in the Facebook Deal or No Deal group that was a CAS 90 plus that sold for 17, I believe, I'm going on memory, 1725. 1725. So just pure insanity. Another one that's also very difficult to find with this AFA label is this trilogo French mecanno Fett. This is a very desirable one that you don't see pop up much. This was graded AFA 80. That one sold for $1,600. A beautiful, beautiful Fett though. But jeez, just these numbers are nuts. Now this is one I feel like was pretty fair. This was a pretty fair price. This was an UKG 80 Lilly Letty Fett, not the removable rocket version. There's one that has the rocket that comes out. That little red rocket comes out. You got to be careful for fakes on that. A lot of unscrupulous sellers will fake the removable rocket. And me personally, I would never buy a removable rocket Lilly Letty unless it's from a very trusted source, like Jose Del Toro, who's a Letty expert, or Stephen Patrick, one of those kind of guys on Facebook. But to get one just from a random person on eBay, there's no way I'd do that. Now, again, we talked about this, but there's two different variations for the Lilly Letty Boba Fett, excluding the removable rocket. I'm talking about for the one that has the fixed rocket. There's a single scar like this one, or you can have a double scar where the CPG 1979 is also scarred out. So there's two different variations for that, but this is the single scar. We talked about this one in a market update back in December. That one sold for 620 pounds or 845 US dollars. That's a pretty good price. That's a pretty good price in my mind for a Lilly Letty. And then there was also a PBP trilogo. It's got the light blue body. This one had the unpainted dart, unpainted knee. There's a painted dart, painted knee, and you know, bi-tone belts. There's, I think, 5 different combinations you can get for this trilogo light blue Fett. That one sold for $783. That was a UKG 85 as well. That was a pretty good price in my opinion for a UKG 85. I would have paid that all day long. Here's one, you know, this price really surprised me. I mean, I've got this Lilly Letty Fett in an AFA 80 plus. This one was an AFA 80, and that one sold for $1,600, which is just insanity to me. That number seems high. This is kind of more in line with what I consider market, but this was UKG 80, this was AFA 80, and you know, that's a pretty massive price premium for a very similarly graded item. This one looks to be in better shape, in all fairness, but $1,600 is about double what I paid for mine maybe 3 years ago. And I mean, you know, I guess that's not terribly out of market, just given what they've done. Here's an AFA 85 version of the same figure. So to go from an 80 that sold for $1,600 to an 85, that one sold for $2,350. That's a big number. That's the biggest number I've seen for an AFA 85 Lilly Letty Fett. I've seen a few AFA 85 Lettys sell over the years for kind of $1,500 to $1,800, but now it's kind of taken that next leg up and crossed into the $2,000 plus threshold. This is kind of an interesting chart here. I found this on Hakes Auction, and we're going to cover the recent Hakes Auction in another video here soon. But I wanted to show these while we're on it. But the rocket firing Boba Fett prototypes. Obviously, that's kind of the holy grail for Boba Fett collectors. If you've got that Boba fetish and you got some deep pockets, this might be of interest to you. But you know, I wanted to show a few data points here for the Fett. And obviously, these are not all the same. There's an L slot, there's a J slot, and unpainted versus painted, you know, so there's all kinds of different variations for these rocket firing Fetts. But I did want to show some data points since we're talking about Boba Fett specifically. But you can see how some of the prices have changed for some of these. But March 15th of 2018, one sold for $86,383. And again, I don't know which of these are L versus J slots. I didn't go back and look up in the history on Hakes Auction's website to give the exact details, but just wanted to show you just some price progression here. But and then let's see, we had this one that sold July 11th for $112,926. So to go, you know, about a year and a half or so, a year and a quarter, it jumped that much. And then in November of 2019, so a little bit past this. This one was a painted example. That one sold for $185,000 and change. And then we had this one last year, last June. That one sold for $165,000. So just some pretty incredible rocket firing Fett data points for those of you that have way, way deeper pockets than I ever will, but I just thought it was interesting. And here's another one I did want to point out. I didn't pull too much modern stuff, but I did want to show this one because this was pretty incredible. This one was a sealed Hasbro factory case of the Boba Fett Vintage Collection mail away in the prototype armor. So you can see that there. It's got a prototype armor. VC61 was the Vintage Collection number. But for one of those sealed boxes, they had it listed for $2,500 plus $67 shipping, and both of them sold. So that is a pretty insane number. Now, there are 20 of them inside, right? So you're paying about $100 and what's that? About $100 a piece, $50. What is that? I can't do the math on that. I didn't pull up a calculator. My brain can't work this morning. But for 20 of them, you're paying $2,500, $2,600 roughly. So that's, you know, about what is that? It's about $100 a piece, $130 a piece. And that's about market. And I'm assuming that whoever bought these probably sent the whole case directly to AFA and had them uncirculated, graded. So, but given the damage on those, you just worry a little bit about what kind of shape they're going to be in on the inside. But that's what somebody paid for those. It's pretty incredible. And also, I never talked about Hot Toys, but I did want to point this one out. This is kind of a cool Hot Toys bust that uses the droids color scheme. We obviously got the Target exclusive Vintage Collection 50th Anniversary Lucasfilm droids figure, the 3 3/4 inch. I've got that one on the way, I think. And this one was a cool Hot Toys bust, though. But this one very consistently has been selling for between $700 and $800. This was a factory sealed example, Hot Toys exclusive, $800 plus $28 shipping. And the other one that was Hot Toys that I wanted to point out was kind of recreating the epic scene where Boba Fett gets sucked into the Sarlacc pit. That one has been selling for about $750. This seller had 12 of them, and all 12 of them have sold. So the Hot Toys are clearly pretty hot with collectors. I'm only going to show one comic because I wanted to point out how crazy Boba Fett comics have done. And, you know, obviously his first appearance is Star Wars number 42. That's been consistently selling in a 9.8 grade for about between $3,000 and $3,500. There was one on my comic shop that just sold for a little over $3,000. But this is one that I picked up before the Book of Boba Fett show started. And I bought this one in a 9.8. I paid a little over $500. I think it was $504 is what I paid for mine, shipped. This one just sold in January for $1,000. So between November and January, the book has doubled in price. And I have the exact same book. This is the direct edition of Star Wars 81, which tells about, and you can see there on the CGC label, the return of Boba Fett. And it you know, kind of describes his escape from the Sarlacc pit, so to speak. And, you know, the Book of Boba Fett didn't follow it exactly. It's a little slightly different, but for the most part, it's pretty, you know, there are aspects of it that are very similar to this book. But I was just shocked to see that price for what used to be a fairly inexpensive book. You know, $100 to $300 book is now, and admittedly, I paid about $500. Now it's selling for $1,000. So pure insanity. But anyway, I just thought we would kind of take a look at this. Thank you to JS, who's a buddy of mine and channel subscriber, for the idea. But I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are as to whether the Book of Boba Fett, number one, have you been enjoying it maybe more than I have? You know, as I've said, I've considered it to be fairly mediocre so far. And, you know, in all fairness, I did kind of expect that. You know, I was a little bit worried about it just based on the first trailer that it was not going to be that good. And so far, it's kind of lived up to my expectations. But there have been some good highlights, but it's just been so inconsistent. You know, episodes 1 and 3 were not good, in my opinion. Episodes 2 and 4 were very good. Good to very good. So, but I'd love to know what y'all's thoughts are as to whether you think the Book of Boba Fett will negatively impact collectibles prices. My gut says no. But, you know, if you guys are enjoying the show, tell me how wrong I am. I'm okay with that, too. So, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I try to kind of talk about various topics that subscribers suggest. And I have lots of price market update videos, things like that. And if you are an existing subscriber, thank you so much again for watching. And to all my Patreon supporters, as always, thanks so much for the channel support. It means a lot. Thanks again, and I'll be back soon.